of the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Cardi out from Madison. Welcome to your first meeting.
Thank you. I was monitoring the last meeting from work, but when my boss stepped in my office, I would have to pretend like I was still working there.
Jonathan does.
Yeah. I did that to him today.
Doing that today, yeah.
Assume we have a quorum. Okay. If I could get an adoption of the agenda motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Thank you. Public comment. Do we have anyone for public comment? Presentation of special recognition. Michelle Edwards is here. Welcome back. Director of Regional Planning to provide an update on the Regional Food Policy Council and food system activities. Good to see you.
That's. Yeah, that's the last slide. So
Yeah.
you're peeking ahead. Okay. So this is an overview of all of our many food system efforts within the commission, and it all started back with our 2015 Farm and Food Plan, which the commission adopted. And this was a multi-year effort. We did an asset assessment of what resources we had. We hired a nationally known individual, Ken Meter, to do an economic analysis and stakeholder interviews for the plan. We did a producer survey online and in paper form, and worked with Cooperative Extension also to do focus group meetings. They facilitated those, and it all combined within our regional farm and food plan. So, and I should back up, the reason why we decided to do this was because our cooperative extension agents in the region said that farmers, especially those in the middle, were showing signs that they were taking losses, they were suffering, and they needed not just anecdotal data, but hard data in order to make that case and show that we were seeing declines in farming within the region. So we did this plan and did this analysis in order to provide that information to decision makers in the region, and also to be able to go after grant funding after that. So the results of this study were very sobering. There was a huge supply and demand gap, that food produced in the region was only $210 million per year. But yet, if you look at the demand for food, it was more than twice that. So farmers were also taking massive losses. Farmers in the region spent an average of $47 million more producing crops and livestock each year than selling them. 70% of the region's farmers had reported a loss, and the average age of principal farmers in the region was 60.4 years old, which was more than both the state and national averages. So the farmers were aging out.
Michelle,
Yes, sir.
sorry, can you, on that last slide, help me understand the difference between food purchases in the region and in the food system and the DC metro region?
Okay, so normally I have a map of this, but the region, our 5-county region, the food system is where people are buying and selling food within the region, which extends all the way up through Loudoun and goes down to Charlottesville and then across over to Spotsylvania. So that's what we, as the working group, the ag working group at the time, decided what was our food system. So it was a bit larger. So that's the economic analysis was done for the food system. The rest of it, like the surveys, were done for the region. Does that make sense? And then the DC metro region, obviously, we all know what the DC metro region is, but so those are stepwise larger.
The food system is something larger than this 5-county region.
Yes,
Okay, and so the purchases. So the food system purchases $7.5 billion per year.
so that's,
Is-
food is, people are purchasing that much food every year.
And,
Not our food
okay,
in general.
That would include like Fairfax, Albemarle, Loudon, you know,
Okay.
most of, so I think, and where you have like DC metro area, I think that would extend into Maryland. I don't think our food system or our food. chain
No,
or
no,
whatever
no.
it's called, including Maryland. So mostly take our 5 counties and add Northern Virginia, Fredericksburg, Charlottesville, Albemarle.
Yeah, I mean, I think we extended into Fredericksburg. We didn't go into the valley because that's another food system there in the valley. Yes,
Michelle, the next to last point there, that's the, not 2012, is it? Is that?
no, it was because this plan was adopted in 2015. So a lot of this data came from federal sources. The ag census is done every 5 years. So that was the last agriculture census
Oh, got it,
that
okay.
USDA did was 2012.
Okay.
So that's
these are
what
the
this
results
data
of
is.
2015.
Yes, the
Study.
plan that we did. So, yeah, so this is starting, you know, this is how the plan came about and how we made our decisions moving forward. So what was determined were the core obstacles was lack of farm labor, lack of farmers, because again, they're aging out, lack of infrastructure, including the need for a community kitchen for value-added products and the need for local food promotion, consumer education, and preserving integrity of truly local foods. So through the stakeholder meetings, we developed a vision statement for the food system of what we wanted our food system to look like. And then we developed a list of 9 priority projects in order to make that happen. And as you can see, you know, we created a regional food council, we created a regional marketing plan, which we'll talk about here in a bit. The Carver Center Community Kitchen and Food Processing Center, phase 1 is complete, phase 2 is already funded and in progress. A lot of these things are already complete or are in the process of being complete or things that are ongoing. It didn't necessarily mean that we at the regional commission did each one of those, but our partners within the region did. So we completed a lot of what we already set out to do. So the next, and I'll back up by saying our Food Policy Council, which was the first thing we did. So the plan was adopted, I believe, in December of 2015. And then in January, this commission adopted the bylaws to do the Food Policy Council. So there are 5 locality representatives, 1 from each county that the local either boards, commissioner, or county administrator appoints to the Food Policy Council. And then we also have 5 technical advisory members in each of those food system categories. And then I act as the liaison member for RRRC coordinating the Food Council. So we meet every other month. And if you want to know who your representative is, I can give you that information. So the council, since we had completed or almost completed a lot of those priority projects, we then in 2023, this commission and the council adopted a new list of priority projects that focused on things that we were in some cases already starting to do and other things that we wanted to get more into, whether it was food access or farm to school or farmland preservation. So we have these lists of the new things. So we're not necessarily forgetting about those old priority projects, but these are new things so we can continue to work and we continue to say, as we apply for grant projects, that these are things that are in our adopted list of priority projects for grant funding. So the second thing we did out of that list was our Purely Piedmont locally grown food marketing program that grew out of our USDA grant. So this is both a free marketing program for farmers that we do throughout the region for locally grown food and vegetables or beverages and vegetables, obviously. So wine and beer as well, if it's produced here in the region. And we provide a label program, so stickers essentially that they can put on their food, whether it's a bottle of wine or a head of lettuce in this case, that they can show that it's, purely Piedmont grown. And we also send them the digital file that they can place on their own marketing materials or on their website. We go to festivals, we've had billboards, we have a grant to be able to continue to do that from the state this year, to be able to continue doing that marketing. There we go. We also have an agritourism marketing version of the brand that includes things like farm to table restaurants, farm stores and stands, agro artisans, farm stays, farm experiences like corn mazes and those kinds of things as well. So we work with our regional tourism directors on this program. And we also have assisted with the Carver Center projects, both the Carver Piedmont Agricultural Institute and the Carver Food Enterprise Center with doing technical assistance. And we've been working most recently with the Food Enterprise Center on some farm to school efforts that I'll talk about. So our farm to school program, we got into this right before the pandemic and got funding from the PATH Foundation to hire a farm to school coordinator that we then had to wait on because our schools were closed for the pandemic. But we've been working on this effort since that time and have seen steady increases from our schools in local food procurement. We have, you can see Joe there in the background, who is our newest iteration of our farm to school coordinator. He's our food system specialist that does tastings at our local schools, mainly focused on elementary schools, but in some cases, other schools as well, including like Head Start and things of that nature at Fauquier County. Outreach provides videos and news and information to go in school newsletters and whatnot as well. And procurement assistance that I'll talk about what we're doing with that here in a little bit. This year we've had a USDA Patrick Leahy grant from 25 and 26 years to do. The first part of that was to do a farm to school gap analysis. We did a survey of both producers for our farmers and processors within the region, and also our school nutrition directors from the school, and looked at, okay, what do you want, and how did these either agree or disagree? And then, what are some opportunities to address this? We've also done a pilot effort at Rappahannock County Schools with the Carver Food Enterprise Center doing value-added products, everything from chicken feed and using local products, whether they were, some of them were things that last season, like fruits and vegetables, were frozen previous season and then being able to be used now. Like I think they had like blueberry and spinach popsicles and things of that nature. They even had the kids in their garden grew pumpkins and they were able to use those one time in muffins and one time in pumpkin crumble. So that pilot effort went well. 75% of the kids, they asked them, do you not like it? Do you think it's okay? Or do you like it? Give us a thumbs up if you like it. And 75% of the kids liked the pilot's food over average. So that was positive. So where we're going next is to really address some of the findings within our farm to school gap analysis. We're working with our school nutrition directors to develop a regional cooperative purchase agreement for 4P foods. All of the schools had previously purchased from 4P foods. when it was, partially funded by state and federal money to be able to close those gaps, but that funding is no longer in existence as of the last year. So we're trying to figure out how to still hit the price points that the schools need and that the farmers need and use local food, but in a way that makes sense for P Foods, in addition to being able to, if we do it as a region, come in at the price the schools want, also provide some value-added foods that the schools can utilize that helps from a staffing standpoint, and most importantly, 4P Foods delivers, which is a major concern for the school, that they want their food delivered to each and every school, which can be very hard for farmers for sure. They were also working with CFEC to expand the pilot effort that that went so well with Rappahannock County Schools. They are expanding to be able to do co-packing with farmers. So it's going to be a while because they're going to be under construction. So but it is something that we're definitely working with them to look at the pilot effort, what worked and what didn't, and move forward with that. Joe is also working on a beef in schools toolkit, looking at some of the issues that the health department has had flagged with using raw proteins in schools. Some of the schools are nervous, especially staff, about working with raw proteins, but we are a beef producing region. So if you want local food, beef is definitely something we want to try to encourage our schools to use as much as possible. So that is, we're looking at the way other schools around the state and around the nation have done it successfully, and trying to get them to use that. I know some of our schools have used it, during farm to school week, but not outside of that. So we're trying to be able to have it be more of a regular thing and in more of our schools.
Michelle,
Yes.
is it a storing concern or a preparation concern? What's the concern? Or
I
if
know
you're
it's
able to share?
mainly a preparation concern, food cross contamination and things of that nature. I know the health department mentioned that not all of the schools have separate sinks because you can't wash vegetables in the same sink that you're dealing with meat and that type. We're working on the details.
Is it essentially all frozen protein now? Cooked
Yes.
frozen?
So yeah, everything is pre-prepared, so it's not raw. They're working with chicken nuggets and par cooked things. So yes, and one of the other things we flagged is that Culpeper County and Orange County have been, as new schools are built or renovated, and just in general, they're taking out the scratch cooking equipment and putting in like combi ovens that just reheat food. So we're kind of going backwards in some cases. So for the schools that can handle the raw meat or scratch cooking, will help them do that in cases where maybe that's not going to work or they can't move to that right now. There's options like working with CFEC and 4P Foods to do things like bolognese sauce, where we're using the local meat in the tomato sauce, or things of that nature where it's value added. We're getting those products in the local food, but it's somebody else that is preparing it, if that makes sense. So there's lots of ways we can skin the cat, but we have to work with what the schools can do.
Do cats do?
No. Chinese. The other thing that is in progress is transportation to food pantries with our regional transportation collaborative staff. The local pantries identified transportation as a key barrier, and initial outreach evolved into surveys and data collection that the regional transportation collaborative did, working with the food pantries, because RTC collects data, analyzes the needs, coordinates, supports, and implements these programs. Typically, it had been serving older adults and individuals with disability, but they're trying to use those same resources to work with people that are trying to get to food pantries, because oftentimes these people do not have cars and they're walking, miles to get to the food pantry, to get an Uber or something of that, like a taxi or an Uber, whatever, to a food pantry, oftentimes costs almost as much as buying the food. So that is not really a good option for them. So there has been 124% increase in ride requests for food pantries in 2024. So we're working to try to get a solution to the food pantries. The short-term solution is Voltran, who is a partner nonprofit, is supportive and wants to do this, coordinating with rides to food pantries with volunteers. So they have the volunteer network already. We have the volunteer network already to be able to do this. So it's just a matter of the food pantries being ready, because there's been a lot of tumultuous things going on with funding with the food pantries. So they need to get that settled, and then we'll move into this. So more on that at a future point. The other thing I wanted to make sure that you were all aware of is the Virginia Food System Resiliency Plan. This effort, I'm on the steering committee for this. It is being headed up by Virginia Tech and some of the cooperative extension agents through Virginia Tech. We've had regional listening sessions around the state, including one at the Carver Center that I presented at. A summary report came out on that, which you see one of the pages there, that was presented at the state summit that they held for this effort a couple of weeks ago. The priority actions that came out of those listening sessions were discussed at the summit, and they range from strengthening networks in areas that don't have food councils. We're pretty lucky having a food council in our region. Not all regions have that. And also trying to resurrect and tweak what was the Virginia Food Council. Previously, the state level food council was not allowed to work on policy whatsoever. They weren't allowed to make policy recommendations, and everybody at the state summit was like, this is very important. If we're going to get additional funding, if we're going to make changes at the state level, which we need to in many cases, they need to be able to act as an advisory body. Obviously, they're not going to set policy, but make recommendations like a lot of the other stakeholder advisory groups that exist in the state. So that is one of the key things that we want to come out of this food system plan. Maybe even hopefully eventually be able to have a legislator champion a bill and get more funding for this type of thing within the state, because frankly, compared to North Carolina and West Virginia and Vermont, we do not get funding compared to those other states for these types of things. And our ag community needs it. So also in that same vein, investing in infrastructure, things like processing facilities, whether it's value added or whether it's meat processing, and strengthening our farm to institution pathways and things of that nature. So there was a number of things that were discussed moving forward. Next steps for that whole process is to do more regional sessions. So there'll probably be one, I would imagine, in this region, and then have another state summit to be able to actually write the plan. So the goal is for it to be more like our food plan, that somebody actually does something with it, because the previous state plan just sat on a shelf somewhere. But I think the people that are steering it this time, hopefully, it'll actually go somewhere and get some funding to actually do the projects. And I think that's it. Yes.
Michelle, did you find in all of the work that you guys are doing that if a county had an Office of Agricultural Development like Fauquier County has, and I'm not sure if our neighbors in Madison or Orange, Rappahannock have that kind of a position. And something that I'm looking into for Culpeper. So if, for example, if Fauquier, they had that position, which promotes all things agriculture for that, for their county, did you find that having a person like that to go to in different counties, what was helpful, or is your work kind of separate from what that person might be doing?
I mean, certainly Fauquier has utilized that position extremely well for land conservation. And I think that is really where that position has shined more than anything.
Yeah.
And also on the wonderful marketing that is done through that position. And it's great to have somebody at the county be able to go to our food council meetings. I think Culpeper Cooperative Extension is very, very strong, and they've been able to fulfill that niche on things like the Carver Center and other types of work within the county. But obviously they can't do the land conservation and things of that nature. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I think it would be great if every county had a woman.
All right,
Yes.
terrific. We're gonna work on it.
All right,
Okay.
yes,
All right.
and I'm happy to talk with you more about it later.
Yeah.
As far as that goes.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
You started the conversation about the plan and a list of actions that were completed or ongoing.
Yeah.
Is there a thought that the plan needs to be updated, revised, reissued, reimagined?
I mean, so we then created all those other priority projects, so we would still have things to do, whether we do a whole new plan. I don't know. I mean, we could do a whole new plan. I'm not sure that that really gives us that much bang for our buck at this juncture. Because what we've done instead is do things like the farm to school gap analysis. We've done consumer surveys with this new funding pot we have for Purely Piedmont. We're gonna do another consumer survey and compare the old to the new. In addition to doing surveys of our Purely Piedmont members. So we're still doing data collection, and every time a new ag census data comes out, I calculate the numbers for our region and put out those spreadsheets to all of our food council members to take back to your communities and whatnot. So we're still getting a lot of that data through those pathways. So I don't know.
So
I'd have to think
there's no
about it.
lack of things to do, I guess
Yes.
is what I'm hearing.
We are not lacking in things to do. So I think I've been doing more data collection for these types of projects than doing another food plan.
I could see the work that Ken Meter did in terms of really punching the ag census numbers into the point earlier about the food system versus the region versus DC Metro and pulling some of those numbers.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
So you discovered, I saw on that first to-do list, there were some infrastructure goals. Harbor Center, phase 1, phase 2 were part of that, I think. And do you believe that we have fulfilled the need, met the need? Or is there still, my sense in talking to farmers in our neck of the woods is they are dying for more meat processing facility, dying for, co-packing, freezer space, cold storage, all those
So-
things we just don't seem to have.
I'll say a couple things. One, meat processing is definitely on everybody's mind. That's something that's needed. And, I've been talking a lot with Jacob from Fauquier about that. And that is something that, I think is definitely needed. There was one supposed to go in Madison.
We're still trying to push that. but
Yeah,
yes.
so I don't know what's going on.
Saw them last week.
So yes, when Brad Jarvis had left, it kind of petered out, it seems, but yeah, so I think we need more meat processing in the region for sure.
Does,
That'd be a
does,
full USDA facility,
Yeah,
like 24/7 inspection.
yeah,
Yeah, so we were sad that that didn't come to fruition.
yeah. I
but-
think they were looking at that mobile option at one time, but it's
Yeah.
like that wasn't the plan or the AFIT grant or so. Hopefully that'll resurrect, because there is a need.
definitely,
Yeah.
and Tom McDougal with 4P Foods has many times talked about the need for a bigger distribution facility that's co-located with a meat processing and all these other needs.
Yeah, the food court idea.
The food court, yeah.
Yeah,
And so at Go Virginia, there is definitely an appetite for helping to fund something like this,
yeah,
but only if it's a multi-county approach. So I'm thinking that it might be, you know,
yeah, and we would
if
love
you guys
to
are
work
working
on
on it, we're,
something like that.
we have, I think we've done hit and miss. We haven't nailed it at all. We know the need is there, but we don't know how to get across the goal line.
Yeah, I mean, from my understanding from what Jacob had told me at Fauquier was that the issue that came out of the feasibility study was that, yes, it was a need, but we needed a business to be actually to do it, to take that up and do, and move forward with it. So I mean,
I
yeah,
think
that
Tom would happily lead that
entrepreneur
charge. If,
with me, with having an actual profit. I haven't heard that, but that, I mean, if he is, then we're great.
I think, yeah, I'm wondering if we want to get
Yeah.
a committee,
About that.
a subcommittee or some
Yeah.
kind of group that would
Absolutely.
focus on it. I'd happily,
Yes, I
tell me no,
will.
tell me I shouldn't.
No,
no,
I will say on the co-packing and refrigeration side, that is the next phase of Carver Center. So they'll be doing, so they can do co-packing for
At scale?
farmers at that facility.
You
So
know,
they have their whole, there's the main portion of the kitchen that's already been opened where they've been doing the, food incubators and the light processing. And then there's a space as big as that in the back, that is the next phase that they finally got funding for because it was tied up in the federal government. So now they have that grant funding that came through VDAX and can do that whole back area of the kitchen and purchase equipment to be able to do the co-packing and hire people and all of that. So yeah, I mean, stay tuned on that front, but I think the idea is that Carver is what they call a node versus 4P is a hub. So they would work together. So food, like things like that, bolognese sauce would go to 4P Foods as well to be able to be used. So they would work with Tom at 4P Foods to be able to collaborate on things like that. So the Carver Center has been working with Tom to refine some of their recipes to be able to sell for him as well. So,
I didn't intend to.
But
hijack the
anyway.
meeting for this.
Sorry.
But would it make sense for us to form a working group on this? And would anybody else have an interest in participating? Because I think that Go Virginia would get behind us if we had 2 or 3 counties or jurisdictions that were all willing to work on it together. And I don't know where this,
That want it, so.
they're dying.
Yeah.
They can't get their cattle in the slot,
So
for a year. or two.
What is the barriers? I mean,
Nobody is stepping up and doing it.
Business.
but
Yeah.
if there's money just falling out of the sky, nobody wants it. It seems
Well, I
a
think
little
it-
too convenient.
I think it's,
I was gonna say Jacob, I think is having a meeting to look at public-private partnerships, because maybe the funding to attract a business would be part of it.
Yeah.
And I was hoping to have more information in the
Yeah.
next 2 weeks about that, but I think it's someone to own the business. And I also think there's a shortage of meat cutters, so to speak, that have the
Something I know
skill.
Rappahannock had been working on.
Yeah, and
I've talked to 2 of our producers who, one could fund the whole damn thing himself.
right,
And I think he would love to be the lead, but what stops him so far is I think they're looking for some government partnership to get out in front.
I think that's why they were having this meeting with path and
And some
another.
predictability.
Yeah, some
and-
predictability to help with the building piece.
We loosened our zoning rules a couple years ago for both meat processing and vegetables, everything else, fruit. But
I'll volunteer to be on this thing. How do we establish this and get it going?
We have two that raised their hands.
We have a team.
From
That's
the
good.
ease of,
Right there.
having an ad hoc committee, two is a pretty good number, in terms of, not having to juggle too many schedules, and I think, probably a follow-up between the two of you and Michelle, and then maybe a couple others, or, based on what you hear from Jacob as well.
Also moving together.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
We have,
I do have a couple questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Just real brief. So a couple of those data points were from 2012 and 15 when the council, the plan was adopted. Have you been tracking metrics? So 70% of farmers reported loss. Has that number changed? The average age was 60.4. Has that changed?
I will need to go back and look at the data. Some things have improved, some things have not. Certainly the pandemic exacerbated things in some fronts. And when it comes to vegetables versus protein, those switch places a lot, so it depends what kind of farmer you are. But I can get back to you on that. I mean, I know that we have had a lot of beginning farmers that have, been introduced. At the same regard, we've had farmers, continuing to age out. Our dairy farmers, as many of you know, have absolutely cratered in the state. Versus wineries and cideries have exploded, so it depends.
Right, we lost 300 dairy farms. Yeah, so Farm Bureau's pushed young farmers. So I wonder, how do you know if what you're doing is working if you don't?
Yes,
Where you
we
go back and check
do,
your
we
data.
do check all that, and I present it to the food council. I think I've, done it twice since this has been out, but I can pull those numbers. And
Last question, who are the council members?
the counts, yeah, if you go back through,
No, that's not good.
You just-
Yeah, I know, it's a PDF form
There it
from
is.
August, so, yeah.
yes, so those are the council members. The ones at the top were appointed by the localities themselves. Oh yeah, Julie Miller is the new services director.
Right, my husband's an active duty army, right, National Guard.
And then the technical advisory members are appointed by the council themselves, that we vote. Ruth Welch from Rappahannock Food Pantry has stepped down because she's retired from the food pantry, so we are in the process of filling that role, but the rest of them are accurate. You're welcome.
Did you know, we had a gentleman, it was myself and Dr. Miller from Rappahannock County, had a gentleman from North Carolina that came up. He had his own, he's got his own farm and slaughters cattle and produces all the good stuff, USDA. And we talked to him, and it was to do it right, it was gonna be about $8 million. And then it was going to take multiple years because the USDA has to approve everything and that kind of stuff. So my guess is we could get him to come back up if we have interest. So,
I will put you on the list of people.
and that was several years ago, so I'm sure it's more expensive. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, if I
Yes,
could
sir.
just make a quick introduction, everybody. This is our new interim county administrator, Shane Crum. And Shane comes to us from the private sector, but he's currently in a master's program at George Mason for public policy and such. And terrific, great having Shane with us. He's hit the ground running. He's been he was named the interim county administrator about 3 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
And so he's been obviously running in 1,000 different directions. Tuesday night, he gave the latest budget presentation, and since he didn't craft the budget himself, he had a pretty good mastery of all the details on that budget, so he's doing a great job. Just want to make sure everybody knows who's with us today.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, sir. Very
Yes,
happy
sir.
to be here. And, thank you all for bearing with me as we work through this interim period. So look forward to working with you all.
Welcome.
All right, we are now into the consent agenda. There are two items on the consent, minutes and the FY 2026 year-to-date revenues and expenses.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm going to recuse myself because I was not here for the last meeting. So I'll recuse myself from the entire consent agenda.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, I recuse as well, so I was.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Anyone?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And two abstentions.
Yeah.
Thanks. Executive Director's Report, Patrick.
All right.
Director's Report.
A couple of things to highlight, and try not to duplicate myself with anything coming up later in the meeting. The Housing Summit, on March 27th, we had over 100, I think, if we could, done my count, probably in the 105 to 110 range at Airly. Really felt like it was a good event. We had a good mix of, not just nonprofit housing developers, also for-profit people there as well, and a lot of partners throughout and sort of beyond the region. Thank you to Mr. Broadus for being there, and for asking good questions throughout. I think that was really good, and I think we've got some definite follow-ups. We had a meeting on Monday with some of our some of the planning partners that helped us put together the agenda, just kind of talking about next steps. And I think we probably already have the bones of a follow-up, either series of meetings or a follow-up summit if we so chose to go in that direction. Not asking for that, kind of approval at this point, but certainly we'll probably come back in June with some additional thoughts on what we might do in follow-up to that. All of the presentations from the keynotes are on the link that's there and in the packet. And I will say, if you were with us in 2023 for the annual meeting, Ryan Price from Vineyard Realtors gave another kind of follow-up presentation in the morning. And I think just some of the data, not just from him, but also at the lunchtime keynote, Jonathan Knopf, the top of the board, Virginia, just really interesting and just timely. So if you want to click through, please do. You can see the note, and many of you, well, I don't think they're doing anything today at General Assembly, but we are awaiting the General Assembly's budget for water supply planning. Specifically, it is included in the Senate's introduced budget, but I think as if you've been following, and certainly the legislative updates from Elvin and Laura, I don't know that really has much to do with anything until they decide on the revenues, how they're going to approach that. So we have been, between Michelle and I, have been waiting on that kind of direction in terms of what funding we can expect from the state for water supply planning. But we do have a timeline that we've developed internally that we'll be sharing, not just with you all in the upcoming months, but also with the regional planning unit, which is what DEQ terms the area. So many of you are on that, are representatives from your localities there. I will say we had an outreach from Andrew Noyes, I think, Noyes with DEQ, with the current drought situation, that basically is the entire state, but certainly all of our region. If there is interest from any of you or your localities, if you're having drought discussions, he reached out and said we would be happy to have conversations, convene a meeting, either individual localities or as a group that it makes sense. So we can pass that along to the meeting as well. I don't recall, at least regionally, that us getting that outreach previously from DEQ. So potentially that's a good signal, but at least they're interested in wanting to follow up. So we'll pass that along after the meeting. I will note, and I'm not going to play the video, but you can also click through the Transportation Collaborative, was featured in a recent video that AARP did. They actually were down in the region last, I think, September. And did a 4 or 5 minute clip, really just summarizing a lot of the work that the Transportation Collaborative does, but also there was a grant that they received in 2021, which funded some benches that have the Transportation Collaborative logo on it outside some of our partners like free clinics and things like that, which was sort of a community awareness grant that was received. And so that was the impetus for them coming back down. But I think it was one of like 3 or 4 of the grantees during that time that they said, yeah, we want to come out and do some filming. So it's, really easy to watch and just a kudos to, again, to Krista, Jessica and Mallory for going through that. Mallory Grady, who was previously our farm to school liaison and is now working with Transportation Collaborative. I think this was like her second week back and she's taking them all around the region with partners and doing that coordination. So really good there. A couple of things that I included in the packet. One is just many of you with VACO and I assume from VML2, the opportunity zones. And this came up probably about 10 years ago when the opportunity zones were first announced. What I would say is as the VACO email says, there's a survey out right now. For those of you that may have, let me see if the map is on here. So this is the map of the eligible tracts. Biggest change in our region, previously this tract in and around Runnington and Neilton was included previously, in the kind of Cedar Mountain area of Culpeper was included previously. There was also one in and around the town of Orange that was eligible previously, but is no longer. You see Rappahannock is entirely eligible, and that's because one of the changes they've made, and this comes from a PEDP webinar, was in addition to like economically, some of the economic indicators, they've also developed what they call rural opportunity zone part of the process. And so I have a feeling that's why Rappahannock qualifies. But I would, if it is something, I don't think we saw any real activity in the region from the first opportunity zone designations. This is meant to attract private investment. But I would say if you don't participate either through the survey or through these webinar and kind of let them know, you're sort of missing out because they do have to select, I think, down from all of the eligible. I think they can choose up to 25% of those. So it would behoove you if you are interested in having any or all of the ones that are eligible in the county to share that back to BDP and DHCD. And then the last thing I'll say is just the updated calendar for you all, just the dates, and this is solely at our commission meeting dates. I will share more information certainly before June, but on this Virginia Association of Planning Districts Funding for the Future workshop in Fredericksburg, which we're doing. Those are being done 4 different areas across the state. The first one's coming up in May, which is over in Stanton, but that will be focused on funding resources in this case for our region, Fredericksburg. I think down in northern is also. The only addition or the 2 changes, one is the annual meeting, as last time for any conflicts, but we settled on October 7th. Thank you to Mr. Snyder for connecting us. So we've already got a location in the town of Orange, right there at Soapville Grill, Spoon and Spindle. So that should be everything's pretty much set, which is I think a record for us because normally I'm running around in June thinking, where can I do this? So we're good there. The other date that was added was September 15th for anybody that's ever been to the Transportation Collaborative's volunteer appreciation event at Old House. It's a great opportunity for the volunteer driver programs to go out and just recognize some of those that are out there. They usually have in the neighborhood of 150 to 200 people out, and just a really very casual, informal. But got that date on the calendar as well for September 15th. And I think that's it. I'm happy to answer questions on any of the other bullet points in the director's report if you have them. Yes.
I have a question. Hazard mitigation, what's on my mind, because trees keep falling on that electric line at Rapidan Camp. Do we know where that power line is? That made its way in there. But...
Yeah, so I can give that update just quickly. The application that we put in last June, maybe in collaboration with REC, we had gone back and forth with VDEM several times. I think VDEM really had a difficulty trying to figure out, and we struggled too, trying to figure out benefit cost analysis on that one. So the last thing we heard was at the end of March that VDEM had officially said, we're not going to push this forward to FEMA for the integration. We have had conversations with REC. I think we'd be willing to go back in if we can get through that. How do you identify what the benefit versus cost is? I think it's that project for the power line, the utility pole replacement. I don't think it's one that they've really ever seen at VDEM, so I don't know that it's a case of we just need to identify the right funding pot, or we just need to keep pushing them to refine away from really looking at flood protection, projects, which I think is what typically it's funded through hazard mitigation grant program.
They're going to wind up losing the historic camp at some point if they don't.
I thought about, as you mentioned, the wildfire that was a month maybe 4 or 5 weeks
We've
ago.
had
less.
two in the last, well, I think, 2
Mhm.
months, and then of course the big one in 2023.
Right, and so we had that information in terms of loss. I think the other problem for that and for those sorts of projects is. There's really not, because that specific line is going through a rural area, there's really not a loss, there's certainly a damage to property, but there's not really a loss of life. Unless it got really big, which you don't want to happen, so I think, again, trying to figure out how do we get that through the process and at least get it, something that could be considered in the future. I thought you were gonna ask about hazard mitigation plan, which is now April of 2026. We had submitted it up to VDEM in December of 2024, and it has been going back and forth between VDEM and FEMA. I did have an email yesterday from Sean Peavy at VDEM Region 2, asking for one final piece of clarification when I asked him, is this potentially good news or getting us to the point of having a plan that we can take back to localities for approval? And he said, based on the phone call I had, this was the last piece of information they needed at FEMA to that step. So knock on wood, maybe we'll have something. It has been a frustrating process. Michelle can attest to that too. I will say I was meeting with other PDC directors last Friday and brought just that specific issue up. And I don't think we're alone in some of that slowdown because of staffing changes and staffing losses at FEMA, but also the shutdown both last fall and more recently impacting that agency and its ability to do some of these frankly more menial tasks compared to what they know how to do.
Thank you, Patrick.
Old business seems to be a clock here in a Rappahannock conversation at this point. That anybody have anything on broadband?
Seeing activity now.
We have activity too, but that's about it.
And some green boxes around Rappahannock. That makes me feel good.
We only have one thing, but yeah, it's starting.
Yeah, Firefly is making headway in Madison. I mean, even in Etlin. Some of my neighbors, they've trenched and brought their wires up to their house. Everybody around me except for me, but that's all right. I get it. So yeah, and Jonathan, you're hooked, you're in there.
Wife's happy.
Like,
She thought we were gonna be first. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Now you can work all day round.
You gotta go to work. Remember, this guy's beside me.
So yeah, they've made good progress in Madison.
I think they're expecting
Please.
overall 60% take rate when the
Yeah.
project's complete.
That's really good.
Yeah. Let's call Pepper.
Making progress, fiber linked in charge, and so we can just sit back and relax.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's awesome.
That's right.
They haven't kicked off any actual work yet. I think they'll be starting Richardsville here in the next couple of months. I think one of the things we're tracking is making sure the residents understand Valley Link and Fiber Link are not connected.
Never thought about that.
Yeah.
That is a big one, isn't it?
That's
Wow.
right.
Wow.
All right, regional.
If it were, Valley Link would be disbanded.
Moving on to the next item that we've added is the regional jail and courthouse projects going on. Any discussion?
We have Frank Dyer, the superintendent, coming to our May 5th meeting to give a presentation and answer Q&A for supervisor. So supervisor, make sure to get your questions in ahead of time for me to facilitate this.
The superintendent of
CDR check, correct. I believe the board is very open to that path, has been discussed recently, so. Yeah, we're expecting a productive session on the 5th with him. In terms of the courthouse, we have a full town council and full board of supervisors interaction meeting scheduled for the 30th. We'll be going over some recent studies that we've done, one that's been run by Mosley Consultants Group on courthouse expansion, and the other one by BT on space considerations and parking considerations. So going over all the results of those studies, and BT will be there to facilitate. So yeah, again, I guess on both items, we're kind of at working level, exchange of information still on those projects.
For the regional jail, because we're one of the current members, is there a timeline you think on that? I mean, I've had conversations with superintendent about it. We welcome Culpeper, but is there kind of a timeline?
Yeah, fiscal year 27 is when we're looking to do the down payment to buy in. So
yeah, I mean, we're looking to make a move relatively quickly here if we
Right.
decide to go in that
And
direction.
sooner instead of later.
Okay. Thank you.
We're doing our best to keep the judges occupied and mad at us, so they're not mad at you.
Not, thank you, I appreciate. They are happy that our budget passed and we're gonna be moving into RFP stage for design and build. Let's hope it. They were very happy with you, Paul.
No, they weren't as of a couple weeks ago when they wrote us a nice letter, but
Meet with them often.
yeah.
Yeah, that's my.
That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
We still haven't figured out why our judicial center is so much smaller than your planned center. Right?
Right, that's right.
Have
We don't
y'all,
know either. No,
But you all resized it recently, right? Didn't it get?
no,
Oh, okay.
no,
Got it.
no. There's just so much more problem.
Is it, yeah, I was gonna. say
Yeah.
that. Caseload?
No, I mean, actually, yeah, I think that's probably it.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Cause they're
Cause
all,
we would need an extra, judge. Which one is it? Circuit court, I guess circuit court judge. Yeah, yeah, it's our caseload is very high. So that's probably the biggest driving force. Just not, just more peaceful in Fauquier County.
I guess, so, yeah, all right.
That's it.
But- We do have the summit meeting coming up with the town, which that hasn't happened in quite a while, has it, Mr. Hobley? Both groups getting together?
Last time we had that was during the settlement negotiations over 10 years ago.
Oh, there we go. So we're looking forward to that on the 30th.
The mayor was sitting right there.
Friday, is that right?
Tom.
Oh, okay, good.
I had a different term for it, but.
Patrick, a final update on the PDC housing development program?
Yeah, and Michelle's presentation reminds me that many of you weren't around this table when when the PDC housing development kind of came to fruition, but I do want to give a kind of closeout on this, once we have mostly reached the end of our process here. To some of the background, 2021 Virginia Housing approached all of the PDCs across the state, all 21 of us, with a concept for flexible funding to support housing construction. That was kind of a period of months early in 2021. And in June, we were at, I think we were at Warrenton Town Hall, moving the meetings around the region after the pandemic. Virginia Housing was there and kind of talked through what their goals were. So the commission approved an application to the PDC Housing Development Program, and then a month later, we were awarded $2 million from Virginia Housing. And really, the primary goal was a minimum target of 20 housing units. They funded this based on population for each of the PDCs. So some of the PDCs, the lower population got $1 million, we're sort of in that mid-range, so 2 million, and then the largest ones got 3 million. Each $1 million, you basically said, will help support 10 housing units being constructed by 2024, which was the initial deadline, which was later extended at least twice. Because it doesn't, building houses does not happen in 3 years, from start to finish, is what we learned. So we, as a staff, developed a application process. So in December 2021, we received 9 pre-application kind of proofs of concept from partners. And then in January, after having some follow-up discussion, we received 7 full applications, requesting 2.9 million from those partners. And then in February, the commission approved initial allocations to 6 projects, 6 partner organizations, total of 1.8 million. And then at the end of December, after additional conversations with those 6, it became clear that 5 of those projects staff felt at least that were still viable. One of them, potentially more to come after I finish my remarks here. We removed the allocation from and reallocated to 2 projects here in town of Culpeper, Parkside and Lightfoot. So here's the allocation of funding and those 5 project partners. So Culpeper Community Development Corporation, Fauquier Habitat for Humanity, Foothills Housing Corporation, People Incorporated, and Skyline Cap. And you can see the total allocated through the PDC program by the regional commission varied between 200,000 and up to about 560, just under for People Incorporated's project. these percentages here and the average funding are from the initial project cost. So what they told us they thought it would cost in 2021, I can say for a fact that both People Incorporated and Culpeper Community Development Corporation, probably Habitat also, their total costs were well above what they thought they would be initially. So the percentage would actually be lower for those projects just because of overall costs that they saw in that time frame. And then again, the locality and then status of where everything stands right now. So the first first one to complete was with Skyline Community Action Partnership, and that's the apartments on Main, so right on Main Street, sort of in behind, if you know, driving through Madison, in behind Skyline Cap's office there. This was the former Barber's House, which was operated by Madison Emergency Services Association as a transitional shelter. Had been vacant for I think about a year at least at the time, and that was one where took some finagling with Virginia Housing. I think they had different thoughts in terms of, trying to convey to them what vacant and unused meant. But eventually got that through and were able to convert it. Had 5 existing kind of units in the facility, and Skyline was able to convert and make a 6th unit out of this, added a washer and dryer in each unit. And I think frankly this is a pretty easy one. And I like to use this one as an example of this is exactly the type of project that you want to see in a small town like Madison or, Gordonsville, Plains, Remington. Not something that's adding, 50 or 60 units like we'll see later, but something that really fits into the context of the community. Second one to complete was in Fauquier County with Foothills Housing Corporation. And so the Ben and Mary's Steakhouse right there on Route 17. You can kind of see in this picture, I don't know, it's probably small up there, but kind of in behind is part of what's called Fletcherville, which is a lot of mostly single story, I think probably 1950s, 60s construction that Foothills Housing Corporation is the owner and rents those out as well. So the location was good because it ties in with some of their other existing properties. But this project, I mean, the building itself had, we've got some pictures from doing walkthroughs initially, and you can just see it was a building that had been vacant for many years. And I think they did a really nice job, certainly with the outside and with the interior for the 4 units there in the building. And again, moved pretty quick from kind of start to finish. And those 2, I think, were, if I was going to start over and do this again and work with our staff and the commission to have this sort of funding again, I think those 2 projects really, they really just stand out because they were pretty simple, but again, because they were sort of adaptive reuse of buildings that, really were innovative. I think there's a need for the other types of projects too, but those 2 certainly stand out in the way they work. So then in Culpeper, with Culpeper Community Development Corporation, the Parkside project, so right on the other side on the western side of Yale Meadow Park, as you're going out 522, this was a property that Culpeper Community Development Corporation owned the property, was looking to do this, and the timing was really good for them and for us too. So because with 37, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, that gave us the confidence of, okay, we're not going to have to piecemeal a lot of smaller projects together. We're going to hit our 20, with one single project. And so I think that was helpful. This also made use of low income housing tax credits. They had a ribbon cutting last September. And really, again, you can kind of see it in this picture, but there's residential neighborhood. It's right in between Yamato Park and existing residential. So it kind of fits well within the community there. Fauquier Habitat for Humanity. So our funding there with Habitat supported 6 single family homes. And if you know Hayti Street in the town of Warrenton, this is kind of try to get, this one, if you're driving down Hayti Street, this first picture with the hard hats is on the left where there was a vacant lot and where they put in a triplex, kind of a 3 unit, single building, but a 3 unit triplex there. And this was on the right side if you're driving down Hayti Street. And there was a demolition of, I think, 3 buildings on this lot, which kind of has a pretty significant grade going up the hill. And you can see here the picture of where they had a crane that was brought in to drop these modular units in on not just this side, but there's also another building out behind this one up from the road. So again, 6 units. I would say this was this is a process. I think Habitat found, I think they even found on this lot here, if I'm not misstating, one of the things they found was that at one point they found that it had never been subdivided and they had 3 different addresses but they couldn't address it because the deed hadn't been executed from, many decades ago. So they had to work through some of those things. But I think between them and the town, they were able to get that completed. And they've been doing a lot of other work in High Street, Habitat has. So this again fits in with a lot of work they've done in that neighborhood. And then the last project is the most recent for ribbon cutting, and that's the Lightfoot Apartments. Again, just up the road here in town. You can kind of see, again, this was over here is the Head Start building that's operated by Culpeper Human Services. The land here, and kudos to the town and the county, 3 different parcels. A couple of them were small little triangles, if I remember correctly, up towards the road, but People Incorporated needed all 3 of them to make the acreage and the unit numbers work for their LIHTC, low income housing tax credit application. So again, you come in right here off of Lightfoot Street. You think you're adding I guess these are 3-story apartments, and up here you've got some smaller units on both Vicker Street and Lightfoot as you're coming in. But you don't really notice it if you're driving by on the road because it sits down sort of based on the parcel itself. So again, it fits really well within. And in this building where they had the ribbon cutting, I kind of walked through there, they had, just people walking through. And one of the things I noticed was a lot of times you see an apartment complex built, and you've got fences all around the side because they're marking off their property. You looked out the back of this building and you're looking right into the backyard of the neighbors I think it's on Lightfoot Street. And I commented to Brian Cripps that people you don't see that a lot. You sort of feel like they're going to close this off. And he said that at least as far as he knew, the neighbors that were there had been, they hadn't really faced any opposition or anybody that was upset about it. So again, really good project. And so I think that, really, just as sort of a closeout from this project, I remember sitting at the meeting in Warrenton, how many years ago, 5 years ago, and it being sort of is this, what happened? What kind of risk are we taking on if this doesn't work? Thankfully, Virginia Housing was a really good partner in terms of, basically saying, we're gonna eat a lot of the risk. The commission needs to do some things, but I think in the end it worked out really well for us. 113 units and nothing that I would say faced significant opposition or had to go in and say, no, this is why we're doing this. I think the project sort of emanated us. And I mentioned that 6th project, and the only reason I do is because there is funding. They don't have as much funding now, and they're not awarding it directly to each PDC, but it's competitive. But I do potentially see us going back in the future for that. The one project that we had allocated that we pulled back from is the Madison Road project in the town of Orange with Encompass, and what they're doing with the facility there. So I've continued to talk with Cheryl Renstrom and others at Encompass as they kind of advance that project, because I could see this being something that would help them, because I'm sure they'll run into some gap funding issues as well. So yeah, just wanted to kind of close the loop on that because it's been something I've been putting a lot of time into, and I think kind of next to come to the end of it. So, great project.
All right, moving into new business. First item is the FY 2027 Rural Transportation Work Program and Resolution.
Yep, as it says, this is an annual application to VDOT, and this is funding that supports transportation planning, but really some general technical assistance. It's going to be GIS, data collection. Anytime we're working up with a locality on comp plan data collection, if it's related to transportation or assistance on that, we try to leverage these funds to offset some of those costs too. The not many changes this year in terms of the work program. What I would say is that we're continuing to track smart scale projects, but also other planning projects that Culpeper District is leading and that we participate with. But I also use this sort of annually as a reminder. If you have stuff locally that you want us to devote some either GIS or research on the transportation side, this is a funding source that we can use for that. So please be aware, and we do have a lot of flexibility throughout the year to amend this if we need to, or just kind of fit it into the work program. So do need the agenda, or excuse me, the resolution adopted to be able to submit in the week.
I'll move approval of the resolution application to VDOT for the FY 2027 Rural Transportation Road Program.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next, following up the discussion, in February, we had a draft resolution regarding proposed transmission projects. The executive committee met on April 7th and had a lengthy discussion on the current status of the Valley Link project and directed staff to develop a resolution opposing the project. And asking Vice Chair Broadus and Mr. Nickel to provide any additional comments based on that discussion.
I think, one of the things that we talked about, and I'm okay with the way it's worded right now. I'd love to see it have more emphasis on encouraging undergrounding. Right now it references that one of the things, let me see if I can find that resolution here.
It's up on the screen too, if you want.
Oh, that helps.
The last.
Yeah, the last whereas says the commission adopted 2026 legislative program holds infrastructure expansion, should wherever possible follow existing rights of way or be undergrounded. At a minimum, I'd love to see that say and be undergrounded. Because I think that's if it follows existing rights of way and it's undergrounded, I don't know anybody that have any opposition from our neck of the woods. And if we can lay out a path for Dominion to pursue and for BJM to pursue things that we would not oppose, seems to me, even though it's a much more expensive project to go HVDC, I think it can solve a lot of problems for those of us that don't want to see overhead lines coming through our necks of the woods.
Yeah, so I'll add to that discussion, and I think one of the things we're struggling with in Orange County as we've done our resolutions is once you say that and only that, follow existing rights of way and or be undergrounded, you're sort of conceding the need. And so when you concede the need, they're going to ignore existing rights of way and undergrounding, and they're just going to put them up. So we put together a resolution in Orange County. I'm going to send around a one pager where I pulled out and one thing I want y'all to know is I put counties on here because Debbie called me late this morning, and I was trying to get this something to put in front of us. But these were findings that we put in our resolution. And where it says the word counties, just assume that should say member jurisdictions. I just did a quick find and replace because it said Orange County in there. So if it says counties, understand that that's counties and towns and et cetera. And we would have to wordsmith that a touch. But the point here, this was really hitting at some of the need. I'll let everybody read it for one quick second, then we can chat.
This is addressed as a question
Yeah.
I had as well, I mean, that I'm really not involved in. It doesn't impact us, I've less information, available to me, but, yeah, that was my question, like, where's the perceived need?
Right.
Yeah, why is it being built?
So, when we put our resolution, we had a whole bunch of whereases and it said the board finds, so this was, I replaced board with commission. I put counties in there just to get it printed and be able to get here, but we would obviously change that language. And the reason I put these in here is because it goes to that issue of, have you really substantiated the demand? And if you have, it's not here, right? We're not getting any benefit through our counties and I wanted to be sensitive to where it's not going, like Rappahannock. We had this conversation, like, I don't want to say, don't go to Orange and then go to Rappahannock. You're like, I wouldn't want you saying, don't go to Rappahannock, go to Orange. We need to be sensitive to each other and in that regard. And if we sort of say, look, this has nothing to do with Central Virginia. It has nothing to do with our planning, our RPDC, and in the counties and towns that make that up. And so I have no, if you don't want to include this in, it doesn't matter to me, but I think I'm not gonna be offended if you all don't use this. This literally came from ours, and we spent a great deal of time focused on this issue of need, on solutions that they haven't studied, on the fact that they haven't provided data. This is what we learned when we met with all the counties down in Louisa and Tom Underwood was there, and Shane, you were there. What we learned there was Dominion is not giving information. I mean, that is their MO. And the further they can go to the application and then just dump everything out there, that's to their advantage and to our disadvantage. So when we put out a resolution, and as we did in Orange, that hits these issues, we also are sending them a second set of questions based on the questions that we had originally sent them. So I think it would be good if we could weave some of this in here. And I think these were the ones that, as I looked at what we had, trying to keep it reasonable for the group and trying to keep it sort of non-specific to any particular county. I think as a commission, we can say, we need these kinds of things. And so that's why I present this. And I think we, if you look at, they haven't even substantiated the underlying demand. They have not identified all alternatives, nor have they explained them in their reports. They're literally working on all this stuff as they're telling us they're going to do it. It's sort of the same thing they did with FERC at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is they said, well, we just want to shorten the process from 3 or 4 years down to 10 months to a year. And the whole reason is they don't want
Don't want the opposition.
they don't want any opposition. They don't want any more analysis. They don't want to present more alternatives. They don't want to tell you they won't even tell you, well, it costs a lot to underground it. Okay, I don't know what that means. You say it's $1 billion project. If it's $1.4 billion, that's not a lot. Okay, that's a little bit more. Now, if you say it's $1 billion and it's 50 billion, then maybe we're going to have a discussion about you didn't really do a proper analysis on that alternative. And if you were using existing rights of way, maybe it's far cheaper, so it's all these sorts of things that that we need them to do that they're not doing, or they are going to throw in their application at the end. So I'll leave it up to the group on how you want to, if this seems good and we could get, Patrick and the team to sort of weave that in a resolution, adding that in, I'm good with that. Part of me said, wow, it's April. Do we want to wait till June? I think we could wait till June if we want this finalized by June. The iron's pretty hot right now, so I like to strike then. When it is hot, because we can then do an additional resolution once their application is filed and we file a notice of participation and become an intervener in the project. So this isn't the end all be all. I'd almost rather us get the body of the resolution out with these items included. So we're on the record pretty early, sort of taking advantage of some of the momentum. And then once we move into the fall, whenever that is, if it's September, October, when they file the application, then we can engage it at that level as well. So it's just a thought here, and I'm open to any discussion on it.
I think there are, number one, when, I think that our resolution should look unique relative to Faulkner's and any other jurisdictions that's doing one. It shouldn't look like we've got a form letter
It's
and
just a
everybody
form,
has the
yeah.
same one.
Agreed.
And if we can find salient points that are unique to the region, and I,
Totally agree.
right, and I think that y'all have, I think we had some of this in ours, I'm trying to remember, but it was, but this is really does a good job of saying they haven't done enough yet, they haven't told us enough. I had a meeting with Dominion yesterday, we had a meeting with Dominion yesterday, and I left that meeting frustrated that they don't disclose. And I would love for us to make like our number one legislative priority for next year to, that the state, you know, that the assembly force the SEC to force Dominion to disclose all of it. They're to disclose, you know, they have 333 projects in the pipeline. They'll tell you that. They will tell us that the first 111 have CLAs with construction dates and schedules fixed through 2031 or 2032, and that the next 222 projects are in 14 buckets, and they're going to do 1 or 2 buckets a year for the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years. They'll give you that much. They'll tell you how many gigs are in each of those buckets, but they won't tell you which project is which. So if we're making, you know, a land use decision about all right, I've got 2 applicants, so one that's a data center here, one that's here. And the data center, they both tell me that they're like teed up and gonna have power next year, but we can't validate that through Dominion.
Right.
Dominion will not disclose who's getting power when. It could be this guy's got it in 2 years, this guy's got it in 15 years. And so I think, you know, they're the only utility that we don't coordinate planning with. And, you know, our water, you know, everybody here, if you're water and sewer, they work with you, you know exactly what your capacity is gonna be. You know, it's there before you approve the subdivision, and subdivision would never show up otherwise. But electricity is all backwards. We do the land approval, then Dominion's required to bring the power whenever. So I would love for that to be our number one legislative priority, is forcing Dominion to open the kimono a bit. They will say they can't do it because of the competitive nature of their world, that, you know, that if they open the kimono, well, then West Virginia and Ohio and all these other places are gonna take advantage and crush them. And I said, help me understand why, how. And so I think they just are stuck in a non-disclosed world, and we need to help them gently out of that world.
Well, and the other dynamic there is everything's related. Like there's nothing, they will be happy to talk to you about the spider web that we're building. And,
Yeah.
you know, you just don't have it here and it just comes from here out everywhere. It goes to here and then a node over here. So they talk about that. Yet when you say, all right, we got Joshua Falls and Yeet, let's talk about everything that impacts or is going to happen from there. Well, that's a different project. We can't really talk about that. We're only going to talk about 115 miles.
And they try and make it
that
so
is-
complicated that we won't be able to understand.
Yeah, right. That is a smoke screen, and that's how they are duping all of us, frankly.
It's possible they themselves don't understand.
Well, I
But
think when you
I
get
know.
into the alternatives, like if you're doing alternatives analysis, and if you've ever done one, and I've done plenty, personally and early in my career for a 142-mile interstate. And you've got to have your alternatives, you got to have the comparisons of them. You just can't say, well, it was 155 miles to existing right of way for 90% of it. Now we changed it to 115 miles and there's no existing right of way being used. There's a massive difference between those two alternatives. And you have to evaluate it, you have to understand it, you have to, well, all right, what if you underground a portion of that? Or what if you don't? And how does that impact? And so I think, again, I'm not like, this has to be done today. I think we could come back in June with a refined resolution that maybe changes it up a little bit, but keeps the same themes and adds to what we have. But again, I just thought we need something around the need, we need something around the alternatives and the solutions that are presented and what has been substantiated or not. And once you get that out there, then that leads into the SCC proceedings.
And I guess.
And let me just say one other thing for the group. The SCC proceedings are paper only. Like I mean, they read paper and it's a paper-based process, which is why we need this information. Now you have testimony and expert witnesses and everything, but all it comes down to is the filings that are there.
Do we know what the timeline is for SCC on this project?
Well, they are saying again, that this will be filed as an application in September and they expect it to be decided within the year, 10 months from there, roughly, and that it'll be built by 29, I think is they're gonna have it operational by 29 is what they're saying.
I'm generally comfortable with the last paragraph. So those of us who aren't directly in the path haven't done all the research, so I don't know if I can.
The last whereas or the last?
The last paragraph on what.
The Vietnam
Nichols
results?
is- The commission is basically,
Oh, Brian's last paragraph.
yeah, Brian's last
Yeah,
paragraph.
okay.
And quite frank, I'm really worried about the whack-a-mole situation here where, you guys have success in killing this one. And I've got parallel 500 kV lines coming through the side of my county that automatically turn into a 765. So
But here's the issue with that.
going to,
And
heading over to Culpeper.
we dug into that, and so one of the things we said was, why aren't you using the 500 right-of-way line in Orange County? And well, it just makes sense to take the 765, you build it all new terrain, except what they're not telling you is they're gonna upgrade that, and
Yeah.
it's probably gonna be a 765.
Yeah.
So we don't even know what we don't know, and so that's the other thing here is you're doing 1,765, but you're well, even in the Culpeper substation, they're talking about cutting 2 500s, bringing 4 500s in, a 765 in, which is equal to 3 500s, another 765, and potentially a couple other 500s. That impacts all of us. Like that 85-acre substation is enormous. It is going to be, the eastern part of Culpeper will glow. I mean, but just from the volume of electricity going through there.
What's the status of Culpeper? Do you all have the right to approve or the land use piece of it?
That is correct.
And do you know where you'll be on that?
No, it has not come to a vote yet, so
Okay.
we sure did hear from our folks in Richardsville, though, the other evening.
Well, the resolution did specify this
We-
substation.
Yeah, you added that at the end,
No,
right?
We are officially opposed to it, but the actual vote
Yeah.
has not come to.
Well, there's not been an application, I presume.
No, they have not
Application.
they have not put in the application.
Interesting to get ahead of an application.
But, Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion
Yes, sir.
that the commission directs the executive director to somehow combine these two documents into a workable resolution that we can all support and present to us back at the June meeting.
You have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second discussion?
And I'm fine. I think part of that, just for discussion, is, sending around to be sensitive to comments, because we don't want an unintended consequence. I don't want this in Madison Green. I don't want it in any town. I don't want it in Rappahannock. You know, we've got a situation here where we're getting very little information and all kinds of impacts.
Meanwhile, I
And-
used AI to try to answer my questions about the transmission line.
Right.
If I could speak just briefly, the folks, we had a big turnout, our Richardsville, that the area where the substation would go, and their biggest concern was that they did not hear any information, that there has not been a study regarding alternatives. There's no talk about another way to do this. There's no talk about underground. We heard that a lot, right? And I'm like you guys, I don't work in that world, but at least really, I think everybody needs to hear, okay, we studied the underground option. This is what it could cost, or we've looked at these alternatives. So I do think everybody feels like it's just being, ramrodded down their throats. And so I think a resolution from us would be really impactful.
One of the things that maybe we can include this in whatever resolution we work on, or maybe it's also a legislative priority for us. Dominion, and I guess all the utilities do this, they only look at the cost of their direct cost. If they've got a 200-foot right of way, they're buying that right of way. They don't take into account the impact on surrounding properties. And everybody knows that if you live within eyesight of that thing, your property value is going to be impacted.
40% is what we kept hearing.
Yeah.
40% decrease.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
And the closer you get, the bigger that number is.
Right. Mhm.
And I think when they say, well, if we go underground, they have given us numbers for undergrounding. They said, if you go underground for HVDC, a year ago, I got numbers from them that said $600 million to $800 million for each end point where you have to do the conversion. Yesterday, they said about $1 billion for each end point. And construction costs are going up. I didn't know they were that fast, but they're going up.
10,000%.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're doing a long enough line, those costs are amortized. It might be a $5 billion line that has an extra $1.5 billion. And they said that they just can't, they're mandated through the low cost option. And I think if we force them to understand the external costs also, maybe it wouldn't be a more expensive option to consider the underground. And also, if we say everybody knows the demand is caused by the data centers. Well, if you're putting in infrastructure for them, do it the right way and charge them for it. And so I think to the extent we can incorporate that into our message, and maybe this is not one resolution, maybe it's a resolution every 60 days, and everyone hits a different point.
Yep.
And we just keep hammering them until they get it.
And here's the other, I want to make sure I say this, because it's easy to bash Dominion and AEP out of Ohio and it can be fun. But I want to underscore a point, and Louisa County has a relationship with Dominion, like a big time relationship vis-a-vis the Lake Anna power, and they've done a tremendous amount of work with Dominion. And they've sat down at the table to say, we support this, but we don't support this. And they've come out against Valley Link, and it hasn't sullied the relationship. In fact, you don't want to sully the relationship. You want to build it. So, but you want to build it in a constructive way. And if they aren't giving you information that you need in order to be in action, from bodies like this, then that's not appropriate. They need to be open, transparent, and their governance needs to be out front, working with the affected people along the way. And I think that's really important. And I really got a sense of that when I talked to the Louisa County chair, their attorneys, and just really understood how they were. They're like, well, yeah, we just met with them last week. They aren't like, you can't come in my house, or you can't talk to us. I mean, Dominion is providing electricity. In this particular case, they're doing it wrong. They haven't looked at all the solutions. And they haven't provided the data. They haven't identified what those alternatives are. And we have a responsibility representing our constituents to do that on their behalf and make sure that happens in the process. And so it's easy to bash Dominion and I don't think I've bashed them hard enough, frankly. I've been probably overly nice to them. When we ask for our questions in advance of our 1,000 people showing up at a meeting, and they give it to you, 10 minutes before, and it's only because you walk up and ask for it. Where are the questions you were supposed to give us yesterday? And they go, oh, well, here they are. That kind of activity and that kind of action needs to be called out, and I called them out on it. Doesn't mean I'm not going to talk to them, and we're not going to submit more questions and get more data. So I just wanted to underscore that because that's really important in this process.
Thank you. I know we're all passionate about not messing up Virginia any more than we already have. So if you guys are ready, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Let's see, next, commission bylaws require a budget to be presented prior to June 1st. And I think, Patrick, you're gonna provide a background overview of the draft budget.
I'll be brief, because there's no action requested, but it will change almost inevitably between now and June when the budget is put in front of you for consideration of adoption. But you can see here sort of in the cover memo, budget is pretty close to last year, just a little bit over 2.1 million. A little bit less than 60,000, lower than the amended current fiscal year budget. Revenues as usual are the revenues that are either already awarded or are pretty consistent year to year. We've got a couple of grant applications sort of outstanding that potentially could come in, but those are not included in the revenue here. One thing that came up earlier was hazard mitigation, and if you look at the line by line budget on the revenue side, hazard mitigation goes from the 14 to 0, but unless something crazy happens and everything moves super fast between now and the end of June, that money will actually get added into next year's revenue as well. So there will be changes between now and June is the bottom line there. Again, per capita dues are the 83-cent rate that was adopted in August, and that's 7.5% of the overall budget. This year, there's additional local funding for the regional housing and homelessness and the legislative and tourism activities, which totals just a little bit under 100,000, and that's about 4.5% of the budget. So locally, the contributions from your all local governments make up at the beginning of the fiscal year just about 12% of the overall revenues coming in. So then we've got operating expenses. The budget does include a minimum 3% salary adjustment for staff. We have a 7% increase on health insurance rates, which, as I understand, is actually pretty good compared to some of those local. We've been on the bad end of that the last couple of years, so I think we'll take 7 versus I think it's been 10 at least for the last 3 years. Our VRS rates, we continue to have a surplus there, so our VRS rates are really low, which is helpful on expenses. And then project expenses are 29% of total expenses, and this came up at the executive committee meeting, so I do want to kind of talk through that just real quickly on the operating versus project expenses. Our budget really doesn't probably look a lot like your local government budgets do. We're a political subdivision of the state, but our budget, frankly, is more like a nonprofit budget in terms of where the funds come from and how we pay out and with the grant resources. 2 years ago, that operating number that's now showing 70.9% was more like 40%, and that really has grown largely and solely because of the bringing the mobility center staffing internal, which we did last October, which previously showed up as a project expense, contractual expense to Encompass at the time. So that number, I mean, those have definitely shifted the last couple of years, but in terms of what money's getting reimbursed and where it's going, it's not. I wouldn't say that we've grown it specifically on the operating side without a corresponding decrease on the project expense or the contractual side, but it is something that came up. I think the only other thing I wanted to highlight was, again, actually, we'll back up to the sources here. Again, just to kind of show you where the revenues are coming from. Almost, over 70%, 71% is through state agencies, whether direct state funding allocated by General Assembly or other state agencies and their funding, or as a pass-through from federal funds, and that's largely the mobility management funds, which are federal $5310 that come through DRPT. The BDOT money is federal dollars as well. And then the last thing I'll highlight is that other nonprofit private, and that's again largely Path Foundation being supportive of not just transportation collaborative, but also the farm to school program that Michelle mentioned. So again, I fully expect some of these numbers to change, not significantly, but there will definitely be kind of tweaks here and there between now and June when we bring this back for consideration. But happy to answer questions if they're already on, sort of how we develop the budget internally and the way it's looked over the year.
Patrick, I understand the executive committee's talked recently about space, office, and how does that conversation play into the budget?
Yeah, so I think the expense side, so broadly under office maintenance is where we fit in, not just maintenance, but also, the dues that we pay in for the office park association, those sorts of things. And that's grown from but this current year's budget is 12,000. I've added about a little bit under 5,000 to that, and that's largely one to cover at minimum needing to do, other than this front lobby space and the boardroom here. The rest of the office has not really been touched in almost 27 years that we've been here. So that would hopefully cover some painting and carpet replacement at minimum.
Another 3 years, will be ready for that.
We're getting close, yeah. So I think but the broader discussion on the building space was, was directed to check in both with the suites on either side of this, of our space, as far as their interest in selling, because we definitely do have some space needs. And then beyond that, start looking at potentially other options. My, feedback to the executive committee was I don't feel like moving from owning your space and having that asset and going back into a rental space would be, it wouldn't be my recommendation, but it certainly would be something we could look at, depending on what that looked like long term. But we certainly have at minimum, we have just need to do some refreshing needs in the space. I think there's also the option to come back and work with a architect or somebody else to look, are there things we can do in this space to make it more useful? I think it was probably, again, built about 30 years ago with, not anticipating what the world will look like 30 years later. We've got some unused space that could be better utilized as well. Last thing I'll say is this space is not big enough for, some of if we had all the commissioners here, if we even had 85% here, it's not really big enough for this space, so it could potentially look at doing a larger, kind of renovation of the space to see if we could build enough, other office.
So those big swings, if the neighbor said, yeah, actually, we're planning to sell, that would be outside of the annual budget process. That would be from our cash holdings.
I think, if we were looking at making a down payment, that would be out of the reserve funds that I reported on back in February. I think that if it was additional space like that, yes, that would be where that would have to come from. It would be a one-time thing. Would be my suggestion. I could certainly go back and see what they did 30 years, but I'm not really sure how they funded it. I mean, they have a loan through USDA, but in terms of down payment, I'm not sure if they had.
But there's nothing in here to do anything with that.
No,
And this one is paid off in 3 years?
Yes, 2029.
Patrick,
Sorry.
sorry, on the expenses for payroll, obviously the large expense. That one, you have budgeted in a decent increase. Are there any changes in personnel, or is that giving us the ability to do what we might be doing here in closed session?
So that part I think could potentially be built in, but one of the things I talked with the chair about, if there is an adjustment, I think that would be something I'd try to fix by June if there needed to be a change.
Okay.
That increase this year reflects the full year staffing of the mobility center, which since they only come out in October, we had 3 months where it was contractual. So that reflects having those additional full staff members for the full year, along with the other adjustments.
You know how much of this that represents?
I think there's some cushion there, but not a lot.
Okay.
But that's pretty typical for the first draft of the budget for us is you try to pare down as much as you can. And then inevitably, when we see additional revenues come in throughout the year. Or is it, again, this is cash basis, this is the way we report to you all. So when we have, additional revenues come in throughout the year, that typically goes into either unallocated or goes in to fill, something where we may have undercut ourselves, just to have a balanced budget at the beginning of the year.
In the current year, will we have any carry forward?
Right now, the current year, you have about 45,000 that in excess or surplus revenues that are unallocated in the current year's expenses.
Okay.
And typically at the end of the year, that's what ends up going into, again, the building that reserve fund. Terry's online, our fiscal officer, she and I track sort of what we call, sort of the unrestricted, what the reserve fund balance is. But anything at the end of the year has traditionally gone into that space.
Okay. Thank you.
We're not taking action on that budget at this point. There's other information and
Just to meet the bylaw requirements of June 1st, since you don't meet them.
Now, we do have a closed session agenda item.
And that's somebody.
Do you mind reading that?
I move the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission conduct a closed meeting in accordance with 2.23711A1 and 4 of the Code of Virginia for discussion of the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, and reassigning of specific public officials, appointees, and employees of the commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I will need. Promise.
That's all right. We'll get you.
I move to reconvene in open session.
At second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
All right,
Aye.
Don't we need to go?
Need a certified.
We gotta certify.
that's the second, yeah.
Oh, you can do it. Yep.
All right, do you, each of you certify that to the best of your knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered by the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission in the closed meeting? Mr. Broadus,
I,
Ms. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Curry.
Aye.
Ms. Donahue,
Aye.
Ms. Downs,
Aye.
Mr. Hively,
Aye.
Mr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Nickel,
Aye.
Mr. Lenikis.
Aye.
Mr. Snyder,
Aye.
Mr. Weekly,
Aye.
Mr. Gal.
All right,
Good.
Oh, yep.
Thank you. Well, we had a great discussion
Mhm.
and I think we have a motion.
Yes, Madam Chair, I would make a motion that retroactive to April 1, 2026, the executive director's salary be set at $150,000 for the year.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Just a discussion, I think your work speaks for itself, so, we're very appreciative for everything you do and the amount of tenure you put into this place. I mean, your body of work, your team that you've grown, it's very impressive. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. If I could, before the vote, if I could just say thank you for the opportunity, and for the change in salary. I think I shared with the chair when we started this conversation, whenever that was, before we brought mobility center on. I think as important to me is that this structure carries forward, because it's just not been in place, and that's as much on me, but also the previous director as well, just not having that. And so I think having that process in place, I think is super important to me. And I've also, I told Mr. McCrum outside, I've been director for 10 years, been working here for 20 years this month, and I don't know that I've seen in as engaged a group as we have now, and that causes me to sort of look back and say, what other things could I have done differently to get them as engaged? But that's exciting for me. Just kind of looking forward to have you all engage in these sorts of discussions, which have not always had around this table. So thank you.
All right.
do we have a second? Do we second?
Yeah.
We have a second.
Mr. Snyder.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Maybe good news or bad news, as I was looking to see what was going on in Richmond, I see that the House and Senate passed by for the day several of the amendments that came forward, including the collective bargaining ones. So the governor has some decisions to make.
What does that mean, Pat?
Means they sent it back and said, we don't accept your amendments, so as it was delivered to you first, you now have to either say up or down.
That's good.
That should be good.
I'd like to think it's gonna be good. But,
It's better than accepting it. She can help kill it.
yeah.
But now, like, she had
But it's
posed
part of the budget.
putting it off to 2030, right? So theoretically,
It
it
could
could go the
be,
wrong way for us.
it could go the wrong way.
Yeah.
Well, stay tuned.
Oof.
We are at the regional roundtable portion of the meeting. And I will start.
I've been up to my eyeballs in budgets.
No, you go
Well, the only other thing that really was consuming my time is, for those who are familiar with downtown Orange Taylor Park, which was a donated park years ago, is undergoing a pretty extensive renovation, and so far I've kept the garden club ladies at bay, and I'm still involved. Or I think when it's done, they're gonna be pleased, and it'll be a better venue for us.
Thank you. That's great.
What do you got?
Budgets that, the board will officially take action on, hopefully on next Tuesday. We've got a couple projects in play. Our park initiative is still ongoing. We put in for, there's been a large estate that a foundation is set up for, not as quite as large as PATH, but nevertheless, we love donations. So we put in for an additional 1.6 million. If that's awarded, then we can just really go and finish the park, which had elements of playground, splash pad, and various court activities. And then our red barn was partially collapsed during a winter event a little over a year ago. The maintenance building that's being installed in its place hopefully will be completed in May, and then we can get a lot of our equipment that has closed a pavilion that was usually rental income for the park. We'll put that back in use and put our equipment indoors. Let's see, what else I'm missing? We have Tour de Madison. I forget what year it is of that. If you like the bike, great. I do not do much of that. I'd probably turn into an EMS patient. We have a new venue, Madison Hills. They're looking to have an event that runs all through May on the weekends. If you're into is LARPing, I think the term. Some Viking activity. I think they call it Fantasy Festival. That'll be one. Madison County is planning. We're late planning, but we've started planning for what will be held on July 2nd, our 250th celebration that'll be held on the library lawn from 5:30 to 8 p.m. We've got a web page that we're slowly building, putting things on it. I'm meeting with the chairperson of the committee next week to hopefully finalize and put the agenda together, since they've asked me to MC. I need an agenda. We're driven by agendas. We have to have one. So pretty excited for that. And yeah, once you get past budget, you can move on to other things. Economic development really hinges around our water and sewer. We're excited about RSA, which Orange and Madison are members of tapping a new general manager. We believe that will bring a lot of promise to both of those localities, and to allow us to have more EDUs available for purchase for hopefully more business than rooftops. But we understand you got to have a combination to serve those businesses. So I think that's all I had. Mr. Chairman, you got anything?
That's about it. The one thing we did decide, we were talking about, getting the early jump on legislation for next session. So our Economic Development Committee, I think also this coming meeting, we're gonna task that committee also with, with formulating possible legislation that we will start talking to our legislators about early in the process to get them to carry bills. So we've got to focus on that now that we haven't had prior.
Well, very grateful for all of what the county does, especially for the town. We have our final budget workshop on the 30th of this month. And then there's really nothing that I can report on at the moment within the town other than the 250th anniversary happening in the town limits on July 2nd. So look forward to seeing how that comes to fruition and having an event in town limits again.
That's great. Janelle?
Budget's passed, 89.5 cent tax rate, 3% for employees, 6.8% for deputies, and then a 1.5% scale adjustment plus step for fire and rescue. Last week, Warren Green and 18 Court Street are under contract for renovation with Madison Ash for a boutique hotel and event center. So that's very exciting. Long journey, almost a year.
So when do you get evicted? What?
I say, so you can now ask me, we're preparing to move to 29 Ashby Street, which does have separate utilities, which was important. So that's happening, and also getting ready to do a design build courthouse. So hopefully that's moving forward soon.
I couldn't think of anything to say, but I realized there was a lot, but you said it, so it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You all cut your tax rate.
Well, it was
Oh.
reassessment.
Oh, reassessment, okay,
First
all right.
reassessment, 4
All
years.
right. Okay,
So none of our constituents have said, thanks.
I was gonna say, because we were just looking at your all.
Well, there'll be winners and losers.
Oh, yeah.
All right, data center construction is happening. If you come into Culpeper, I mean, there's a lot going on. The landscape is being changed. The most prominent view, if you're coming in from Fredericksburg on Route 3, you'll see the data center going up, and it's like a massive structure. It's pretty scary.
And mud on the road.
Mud on the road. Yes, sir, you are right. So that's really exciting, although a lot of people are not excited about that, but that's happening. And I am having a town hall meeting. I try to have one about every 4 or 5 months. My next one is May the 2nd. It's in the library from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. Beverages will be supplied by Old Busthead Brewery. Thank you, I appreciate that. After the town hall, of course, we didn't want to get people whipped up into a frenzy during the town hall. But please, if you're interested, if you have nothing else to do, and you want to come by, May the 2nd at the library, 11 a.m. That's it. Pass it on.
Awesome. Well, we had a small announcement by L3 Harris of a $1.27 billion investment in their existing facility where they build rocket motors and propulsion, 350 new jobs over the next 5 years, doubling the employment, single largest economic development, business expansion in Orange County's history. That was a big relief because we could have lost it to another state, and we were battling with another state. I want to point out this was a multi-administration effort. The Youngkin administration was heavily involved. Spamberger administration came in, didn't miss a beat. Lots of the local VDP, EDP, all the EDPs were all involved, and a lot of those staff people were, consistent. We had 2 boards that we had a new board, not entirely obviously, but I think the key to economic development, big projects like that, is to maintain your momentum, maintain your communication, your cooperation, and your collaboration. Doesn't matter who's in. When it's good for the Commonwealth, good for the county, you work on it and you get it done. We've put that across the finish line, had the governor in for that announcement, and the Secretary of Commerce and Trade. Obviously, L3 Harris has been there for 30 years. It's former Aerojet or Rocketdyne. You probably heard those. Aerojets are really what it was called for the longest time. And we're just absolutely over the moon on that. We've had a couple employers that recently shuttered on the manufacturing. This advanced manufacturing is they're going to build, just to give you a scale and scope, 50 new buildings for their work on site. So it's a big deal. That's where you sort of get into those 1.2, when you get to the B's, good investment there. On Valley Link, let me switch to that. We did 4 resolutions, a main resolution opposing, a joint resolution, a resolution to join with the schools because one of the lines goes dangerously close to 2 schools with 900 kids. Very good connect there. We did a resolution requesting our state senator and our 2 delegates who have Orange County in their districts to join us in a resolution and a joint letter to oppose. And then we had a joint resolution to continue our collaboration with the counties along the path, the 9 counties that we met with down in Louisa. So we passed those 4. Our planning commission determined that the line was not in compliance with our comprehensive plan. We affirmed that in our main resolution, and we've sent back to the planning commission for them to look at enhancements to our comprehensive plan. And I would just bring this up to everybody. If you're going to do anything on that, Louisa gave us a nice template of things that we could put in our comprehensive plan, and you've got to get that done before the application is filed, because if you do it after, it doesn't matter. They won't even
designate a utility corridor.
A whole series of things that transmission utilities would need to do in order to comply with your comprehensive plan. Kind of shore it up, make it a little more solid and stable. So that was good. Number 4, we just we have our budget as well. Number 3. So we're trying to, we had a big reassessment last year. a reassessment this year. We've got property values across the county on average going up about close 16-17%, even after last year, which we had a pretty big one after 5 years. We got some fire and EMS. We're gonna go to that 2472 program. I'm not sure who we've all talked to or who's doing that, but whoever it is, thank you. It's been super helpful to us. It'll help us finally get that under control. And I feel like we'll have that decided, mid-month, all of those items. We put in a burn ban, just like Madison and Green did. We have the entirety of the county and almost looked at the VA drought monitor. There is so much that's under a severe drought right now in Virginia. It's darn near probably 60% of the state. I haven't seen the exact number, but I looked at Orange and it's orange and that's bad.
Yeah.
So we put a burn ban in, and then finally, we have created a Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. For sort of the first time, we have a Parks and Rec Foundation, but we want to get a little more action going on the Parks and Rec side. We've suffered there, and we've got a lot of work to do, so.
Let me ask a quick question, Mr. Nichols, and both for Orange and Folk here. The 2472, are you both fire and EMS? Does that allow you to? I know if you have fire, there's some mathematics that work for you when it comes to overtime.
So we only have one position, fire technician, which is fire and EMS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the same?
We have both together, yeah.
Do you have levies, fire and EMS levies?
We have a separate levy, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Curry.
Might rain Saturday, but Sperryville is having their Sperry Fest. Where
The
they'll
ducks gonna be.
race
able to float
rubber
down the
duck.
river.
There's not a lot of water in the river right now, so if it rains, that'd probably be a good.
Help them a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's happening. If you all have not been tapping the state shelter support grants, we've applied 3 times and they've given us $500,000 each time to throw generators at our schools. We're gonna replace the roof of our backup primary shelter, which we've never used, but hey, it's gonna get a nice new metal roof. It's been really easy to work through, so I would suggest you go after those. We're doing budget stuff, public hearing next Monday, hopefully adopt Monday after that. Yeah, courthouse is still happening. I don't think we're gonna dally with design build. I'd love to hear your decision making on that sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Well, only part-time, so.
So, the town and county joint pool, we hope to open that Memorial Day, so that's exciting. Been watching that construction, it has water in the pool now, so that's
It looks
nice
beautiful.
to see.
Good start.
The splash pad, it's already open. We have lots of kids up there now at the splash pad, Lake Culpeper Adventures. Probably open later in May. We do that based on water temperature and safety reasons with that. Our reuse project, we're waiting, a notice to proceed from our Stack, who's the developer that's gonna be paying the bills. Before, we're anticipating that later in May, and then we'll get started on that reuse project. Let's see, Heritage Park Amphitheater, that's under construction right now. Heritage Park, which is right there beside the National Cemetery. So that's gonna be a very, very beautiful amphitheater right there up against the cemetery. And other than that, just normal budget stuff and paving roads and all of that good stuff that you do in the spring.
I don't have anything new. Thank you for that. Anything else?
The only thing I would say is, just because I saw it on the social media post this morning, the freeze that impacted a lot of vineyards.
Oh,
Significant, even with the precautions of having, fires kind of burning in the vine, so, sort of buy what you can from them, support them, because they're gonna be something of the year, I think, for them, so.
28 at my house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was cold. Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.